All right, and welcome back to the podcast, The Unfiltered Alternative. This is part two of today's episode. So I'm saying this is episode 6. The Bible says what? Part 2. So if you've just jumped in, check out part 1 first. So this is a continuation of what we were talking about earlier today. So I thought we'll break it down because it was getting a bit too long there. We're going back to the New Testament here. 1 Timothy chapter 2, verse 11. So this is Paul's writing. So let me just pull this up here. I'll read it straight out. All right. So let each woman learn in silence with all submission. And I do not permit a woman to teach or to have authority over a man, but to be in silence. For Adam was formed first, then Eve. And Adam was not deceived, but the woman being deceived fell into transgression. Nevertheless, she shall be saved in childbearing if they continue in faith, love, and holiness and self-control. That's quite an interesting verse, that one. Clearly, you can see the woman is still blamed in Paul's eyes for something that happened many years ago, and she is unable to redeem herself, but only through childbirth. What's your take on that? There's a lot in there, isn't there?
It's a deep verse. It's got a lot. Well, I think that's why a lot of churches today don't have female leaders, don't have female pastors. They use that verse because that verse, it's sort of. But I think Paul was in that time. It was dangerous for a woman to show leadership, to speak loudly in public. It was sort of not in the culture for a woman to teach as well. And if there was a bit of a scare because a lot of women were coming, they were becoming followers of Christ.
Yeah, they're prominent followers.
They were prominent followers, and they were excited about their new faith. And so a lot of these women were talking out quite a lot. And it was sort of seen in the public as, what are all these women going around teaching and talking loudly in the public square? So I think Paul is sort of saying, don't do that, because it's dangerous if you do that. He's kind of talking to the time back then, but I don't think it should be forever. Women should be silent. Women shouldn't have a say. Women until this day. But some churches still use that verse to sort of not have women play a role in the congregation, in leadership.
It's quite obvious that he's got a real misogynistic tone to it, like they should be silent, they can't teach, what sort of authority does a woman have over a man, sort of thing. It's almost like he's saying, she's stupid. The OG Eve, she's the one that's deceived, and Adam's just the one that sort of went along with it. It's all her fault as to why we're in this mess and all this sort of stuff. He probably didn't get it. I don't reckon Paul had a girlfriend, man. I don't reckon he liked women much. I don't think he was very cool at parties. Not very popular with the girls back in the day, and I think he was pretty annoyed.
Well, I think it's more the culture. It was a very man-dominated culture, and it was dangerous for women to be flamboyant in public, to be leaders, to be talking above men. So I think Paul is kind of trying to not let that happen. Let lawlessness ravage out into the community, and all these women come out. So he's trying to turn it down back to the roots of the faith. Have men do the preaching, men do the speaking, women just take the back seat, kind of thing.
But is it fair to say, like, I think reading between the lines, women are viewed as untrustworthy. They're not trustworthy. They're very emotional. They're easily deceived. We can't have them as the pillars of the place. We can't. They can lead us astray. So we have to keep the men, because the men know what we're doing, and we're stronger. We're smarter. We the whole works. Don't forget, like, Adam first, Eve second, like, duh, like, it's that sort of mentality, you think?
I think, yeah, for many, many years, for hundreds of years, there has been that attitude that, yeah, women can't really be trusted. They're kind of, they're if you follow a woman, you'll end up going nowhere, or you end up messing your life up, kind of thing. Yeah, a lot of people in that culture always stem it back to Adam and Eve. See what Eve did. She deceived. She was cunning. She was tricky. Yeah. The Jews always bring it back to Adam and Eve, you know, was the one that sort of fooled Adam. She wasn't smart enough, kind of thing.
Yeah. Everything was gone all good until she turned up, kind of thing. We're on a
Pretty
good
much.
thing. She turned up.
Pretty much.
I was having a fruit salad, all the fruits of the world. It had pears, bananas, mango, strawberries, and she rocked up with a fig, and I'd never seen it before. And she wanted to put in my fruit salad, and I ate it. And then I've got all these weeds to fix up now, and it's all her damn fault.
Well, everything was perfect. Going to plan, until the fall, until they ate that that forbidden fruit. And who was the one that took the forbidden fruit and handed it to Adam? It was Eve, the woman, the first woman. So many Muslims, they in society, and this is a little bit controversial. I don't want to cause,
Hey, that's what this is all about. The unfiltered alternative is what this place is all about. Controversy, yep. Brain farts.
In the Muslim culture, women are kind of not equal to man in many ways, because they see the Adam and Eve story. They see Eve as the one bringing sin into the world, and therefore women should not be trusted. Even till this day, women should not have leadership roles. Women should be sort of have to wear a veil. Women have to, they don't have the equal rights to men. And largely in the Islamic culture, it's because of the Adam and Eve story. In the Christian tradition, we originally blame Adam. That's why we call it the sin of man, the fall of man. Because we blame Adam because Adam had the law given to him, don't eat that fruit. And Adam should have been the wise one to reject the fruit from Eve. So in the Christian, Jewish tradition, we blame Adam. That's why we call it the fall of man, fall of Adam. But in other traditions like Islam, they blame Eve for sort of picking the fruit in the first place and then giving it to Adam. So, women can be deceiving. I think that's kind of what Paul's getting at as well, a little bit. And that's why they're preventing women from taking leadership roles.
So, like, I think too, like, so many times in the Bible, the woman is viewed as a temptress. She's the one that's going to cause you to go down destruction. If you look at, like, Proverbs, you've got the verses that talk about, there's a woman, she's on the lamppost, and like, she's at nighttime and she's on the street, and you see her, and she's taken many good men down to the grave, to hell, and she says, "Oh, my husband's gone out on business. He's taken off," and she's like, "I've got these all silk Egyptian things on my bed. You can come here," and all this sort of stuff. And then you got the contrast with the virtuous wife in Proverbs 31, saying, your wife should be X, Z, and Y. A servant. You want a sandwich? Here it is. You want your washing done? Iron your jocks. This whole work sort of thing. And she's just viewed as always. She doesn't progress. She's just as an aid. She's just a afterthought. She's always, the second in rank. And I also think, like, if Paul was alive now and he saw people like Paula White and Joyce Mayer, he'd probably be, squirming in his grave as to what he's what he's started has been completely ignored.
Yeah. Well, Paul was. It's funny. In some ways, Paul was a progressive. He was moving the faith away from the Jewish Hebrew roots. So he's sort of making the faith a little bit more accessible to everyone, more accessible to the Gentiles. He was kind of progressing it a bit more than having it traditionally just Jewish and following the Jewish law. But then in other ways, it seems like Paul's not helping with the progression. He's still keeping the law, women should just stay silent, So Paul's a bit of an enigma in that sort of a sense. I don't really see Paul hugely, against women. But yeah, he didn't really help the cause for women to have more say in the movement. He kind of restricted it.
I think it's fair to say, but these verses, they've held women back for almost thousands of years, right?
Yeah.
Having this sort of mentality, like, it's so interesting. Like, to me, it's clear that this is a book written by men, and you've got men who want to control, and you've got men who want to suppress and oppress, and all this sort of stuff. And you can see that, like, you got 50% of the population that can't be involved, or they're just viewed as just, this is your place and shut up and deal with it kind of thing. It's not very good, and we're still seeing that now, and people still justify it with these verses.
Yep. There are a lot of churches that don't have female leaders, female pastors. Mostly real conservative churches, conservative Baptists. The Catholic Church still doesn't have female clergy. And they usually cite what Paul said. But the contrast, those Christians, those churches that do have female leaders, female pastors, female theologians, female priests, those churches, they tend to say that those laws were for that time, doesn't apply anymore. They go more on the gifts of the Spirit. If a woman has a gift of leadership, then let her lead. If a woman has a gift of teaching, then let her teach. So there's a lot of modern churches like the Pentecostal church that go more on the gifts, and they allow women to preach and teach and be pastors. But yeah, a lot of the more conservative traditional churches tend to stick to the Paul verses restricting women from. So how do you take it?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. We spent about 15 minutes on that one. This is one of the points that you brought up. Exodus chapter 4. I couldn't make really heads or tails of this one. It was a bit strange. Let me just pull that up now. Do you want to read this one out?
Okay. And it came to pass on the way at the incompetent that the Lord met him and sought to kill him. Actually, can you read it? I
Oh, that's all right. I'll just
I,
quickly read
I
it.
kind of
And it came to pass at the encampment that the Lord met him and sought to kill him. Then Zipporah took a sharp stone and cut off the foreskin of her son, and cast it at Moses' feet, and said, "Surely you are a husband of blood to me." So he let him go. She said, "You are a husband of blood because of the circumcision."
yep.
What does that even mean?
I have no idea.
Is Zephora, is that a guy's name or a girl's name? It has to
I
be a
think
guy.
it's a,
Then Zephora took a sharp stone and cut off the foreskin of her. No, it's a woman.
it's
Zephora
a
took
woman.
Zephora took a sharp stone and cut off the foreskin of her son and cast it at the feet and said, "Surely you are a husband of blood to me."
See, I think it's that whole purity and being accepted thing again. Zephora cuts off the foreskin of her son to prove to Moses that he's acceptable now.
That she views Moses as acceptable.
She views Moses as acceptable, but for her son to be acceptable, he has to have his foreskin removed.
Because so like it's like the family saying, we accept the teachings of Moses. We
Yes,
accept that he's a prophet and what he says
yes,
is
pretty
valid,
much.
I guess.
Yeah, and they're following Moses' teachings
His
and
law.
beliefs.
Yeah.
So to prove that, she cuts off the foreskin of her son to
And throws
prove
that at his feet. Here you go. Here's a calamari ring.
that's it. Here
My
you
son.
go. You want it?
Sorry, man.
Can you just think of it, right? All this foreskin talk in the Bible
Oh,
and
there's more foreskin talk coming.
and
Burn your rings if you
emasculation.
like. We're coming.
Uh, and we've come a long way, to how the world is today. If anyone did that today, that would be barbaric. Like it would be simply. There's no place in society
What would
to
you say?
do
Like
that.
if you walk into someone and they chuck their kid's foreskin at your feet, what would you do?
And they go, there you go. You have to accept us now.
There you go. It's a toe ring for you. Put it on your big toe.
Uh, but that was the culture for hundreds and hundreds of years. That's how they
Still
lived,
is.
and
It
how
still is the culture.
in parts of the Middle East, that's how they still have this old way of living and believing to be pure.
Hmm. Yeah.
Many Jews, many Muslims, they still follow these old laws and they still do um, circumcision and you know thinking that's how to be holy. That's how to be accepted by God. We have to do all this, you know. It, but like, what sort of a God requires that little piece of your penis to be chopped off before you're allowed to be accepted by God?
I think again, like this is a man-made thing where they say it's because of the don't want to be gross, but it's got to do with the hygiene aspect of it all and not
Definitely.
smelling particularly great.
Yeah.
The temple is all about being pure, being clean. If something's
Yeah.
not clean, if something's not sanitized, because you got to remember they don't have Ajax, they don't have spray and wipe back then, they don't have.
Soap.
They probably don't even wear jocks. I don't know what these people have. Like they don't shower, they don't do any of this stuff. You're probably lucky to have a shower once a month. Your beard's really long.
Mm.
You got dirt all over you. You stink. You got
Boiling
BO
hot.
happening, dead skin, the whole works.
And that's partly research, science has proven that's partly why people in ancient times only lived to the age of 40 or 50
Mm.
because of the lifestyle, because of the hygiene. People died early because of these factors,
Well, you can't
lifestyle.
floss your teeth. You get food stuck between your teeth fall out, that gets into your bloodstream, you end up dying somehow.
Exactly.
Scurvy, you don't have vitamin C's, not probably readily available, can't load up on oranges like you can now, whatever.
Well, today, if you're feeling unwell, you see the doctor, and the doctor tells you, "Oh, you're low on iron, or you need more exercise, or your cholesterol levels high," and you work on it. We have medicine to help us. We have exercise. We have everything in the world to help us improve our fitness, our health. But in ancient times, they didn't have a clue. If someone feeling ill, they wouldn't have. They just thought God is punishing them.
That's a good point. You can't get a blood test and see that you've got a disease or you've got gluten intolerance, but you're just loading up on bread every day, or
Bread and fish,
bread and
and
fish.
and the fish might be off because it hasn't been refrigerated.
That's true. They'd have a lot of salty food back then, so you probably a lot of heart issues.
Yeah.
I can't
Most.
imagine cholesterol. Like there wouldn't be, if you look at the diet, there probably wouldn't be a lot of fat consumption.
Mm.
Or they might have had like eaten animal fats, maybe cooked in animal fats.
Mm.
But you would imagine everyone to be fairly lean back then. You're going to do a lot of physical exercise, running around, carrying a lot of heavy stuff, not hairy stuff, heavy stuff. Completely different lifestyle.
It was a pre-scientific time, so any cause of sickness was due to God or the gods um, punishing us, or they're not happy with us. There was no sort of sense of science saying that this is making us sick, or this is a disease making us sick. There was no sense of that in mind. It was just, if you're sick or your family gets sick, it's sort of a curse. It's sort of from the gods punishing us, or we're not doing something right. We haven't put something on the altar, or it was pre-science times. It was all about punishment from the gods. Some of the top scientists of the times knew about disease, and that's why they developed these laws not to eat foods, laws to circumcise, because they did understand that these things are bad for us. But the common layperson didn't have a clue. They just lived and died pretty much, and blamed
That's
God
right.
for everything.
That's right. All right, on the next segue, on the subject of circumcision part, what are we up to? Third, fourth time it's been mentioned today. This is very bizarre. This is bizarre. So, short one. 1 Samuel 18:27. Therefore David arose and went, he and his men, and killed 200 men of the Philistines. And David brought their foreskins, and they gave them in full count to the king. There's this Saul we're talking about, that he might become the king's son-in-law. Then Saul gave him Michal. I don't know how you say that. His daughter as a wife. That's a peace offering. So people usually give people goats and dowry, and this guy gave him a bag of foreskins again.
They're obsessed with foreskin.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't understand this whole thing. So if you think about it, Philistines, they are non-Jews. Do you know much about the Philistines? They were pagan people, obviously.
Yeah.
They would have had, I don't know what their access to water and cleanliness was like. I couldn't tell you. But there must be, clearly it's saying this is a body count. He's basically saying, I am a man of great warfare. I can protect your daughter. I'm going to be the heir of the kingdom. I can accomplish, this is our sworn enemy. Obviously, David, I think this would have been before, it would have been after Goliath got killed, obviously. So Goliath gets killed. He's the giant in the story, David of Goliath, and he's making his way up the ranks, and he's proving his military might, his capacity to be able to fight and defend Israel. And these are they're like tokens. They're like, you'll be like going out and headhunting, or if you're maybe now if you say you go to war and you get the dog tags of your enemies, you take you shoot the guy dead and you take the dog tag off the guy and say, see, look, I got 300 dog tags of my enemy. That's probably what's happening here.
I think so. And the greatest, way to topple your enemy and to prove to your king that I defeated the enemy is to decapitate their manlyhood. Here you go. You show the king that this is how many men I defeated. I've got all their foreskin for you.
Yeah, I think
how many?
because
400?
probably because that
200.
part of the body, it'd be like the pride. You've taken the pride of your enemy away. You've defeated them in that respect. That's, I think, what it's sort of saying there without saying it.
Yeah, I think so. Yep.
And
it's a great sign to the king that you're a great warrior. You've decapitated your enemy's strength. You removed all the men's genital area. It shows that you're a great warrior.
And then obviously the daughter would have thought, oh my God, my husband, my future husband, what a great catch. He can go and by night he can slay all these evil Philistines, these pagans, and he's going to protect me, and we're going to have such a massive family or whatever, whatever they're thinking there. Yeah, I think
the foreskin thing is such a
how did this even come up? I don't even know if this whole talk was even here. Like, it's so prevalent.
Like we said before, foreskin probably most likely related to disease, and gets put into law that the Lord requires it. But it's all over the Bible, Old and New Testament, spanning 4,000 years. Foreskin talk. They were obsessed. I don't think it's worldwide. I think it's mostly in the Middle East. You don't get much foreskin talk in Asia, in ancient Asian culture, or in South America, the Aztecs. They don't talk much about foreskin at all. It's mostly Jews and the Middle Eastern cultures that are obsessed about.
I'm telling you, it's the water.
Yeah, it would be. It's a hygiene thing.
It's a hygiene thing. Anyway, I'm happy to depart with the talk. Let's jump into Deuteronomy chapter 25. Which one's this one again? Let me have a look here. Oh, here we go. More talk.
More foreskin, is it?
You can get away with it. Oh, almost. Deuteronomy 25, 11 to 12. If two men fight together and the wife of one draws near to rescue her husband from the hand of the one attacking him and puts out her hand and seizes him by the genitals, it actually says that, then you shall cut off her hand, your eye shall not pity her.
I've got that as number 8.
Again. That comes back up. That's almost saying, how dare a woman be involved in this duel between two men? How dare she touch me? And she needs to be made an example of here. Would you say that? Is that written in? Like, you can see that.
It's funny. Could you just picture it? Just imagine if you're making a movie, and in that movie you're putting this scene in the movie. There's two men fighting. Why would the woman jump into the fight? And of all things that she grabs is the guy's genitals. Why not his arm or his neck or something? But the Bible's obsessed with the genital area. It's just. And so if she touches the man's genitals, then she can be put to death because she's done that, because she's trying to split them up from fighting.
I think given a bit of thought, I think you can see here the obsession by the ancient world in regarding phallus symbols, and it's viewed as a thing of strength. It's viewed as a thing of pride. It's the man's identity, and it can't be messed with. It's completely like the father, the man. It's all like above. It's all this fertility. It's all this sort of thinking here.
Yeah, yeah.
This is where we've got this sort of obsession. If you go look at like paganism, or even like the middle of St. Paul's Basilica, you got a massive obelisks in the middle of the Vatican City. It's a phallus symbol. That's exactly what it is, and it's the obsession. The Catholic Church basically founded Christianity, established it in the way that we sort of know it. Then the Protestants came along, so that you can see the beginnings of it all, where all this sort of started, this sort of thinking. It's paganism in plain sight. I know we're sort of getting on a bit of a tangent, but it's all related, I guess, isn't it?
Well, I think one day we should do a video on how Christianity is influenced heavily on paganism, because it is. But yeah, talking about genitalia, manhood, man dominating the culture for hundreds of years. Even God is seen as a man. In the Bible, he's always referred to as Father. He's always referred to as him, he, his. God is not a man, but that is how because the culture over the times has been man dominated, we've turned God into a man. But yeah, I think anything to do with genitalia in the Bible is sort of that masculine image, and if you remove the enemy's genitalia or anything like that, it's sort of a big win for you, kind of.
Like it's pride. It's the pride of his life. It's the pride of it's what makes him the macho man that he is. If you remove that from him, that's what goes back to that verse we were talking about before, like the Deuteronomy, the first 23 verse 1. He who is emasculated or by crushing or mutilated shall not enter the assembly. So again, it's that you're defeated. You're not clean. You're not all this sort of talk. Like you're less of a man. It's all this sort of stuff.
Yeah. And I think in this verse, like, that's what men did in those days when they're in battle. They would decapitate their enemy by removing their penis. So in this verse, you've got women trying to do that to stop an argument or a fight. But if they did that, they would be the ones put to death.
Yeah, it's like this thing, like the woman's got to know her place again. It's like that Paul thing we did a few points before. Like, woman's got to know her place. Don't get involved in a male duel. If there's a duel going on, you're not involved. You're just a bystander, or don't even watch it, kind of thing. It's nothing to do with you. This is men's business. This is what we do. Yeah. We fight to the death and all this kind of jazz happening.
But yeah, I think with everything as well, anything in those days, anything, to solve anything, they just throw the death penalty onto you. Bang. If you get involved, you got the death penalty. You get put to death.
Or like, chopping her hand off. So like, what is it? 70+% of the world is right-handed. You chop off a woman's hand. No, we're not talking about going to surgery and getting it sewn off clean. We're talking about her screaming her head off, blood everywhere. She's going to go into shock. She'll probably die from that injury. That's a horrific thing to happen to somebody. And, I think it's Islamic religion. If you get caught thieving, you steal something, you'll end up losing your right hand and your left foot. This is where these ideas come from.
They still do that in Saudi Arabia, I think.
Yeah.
Unless they recently changed it because they got a new leader who's quite progressive. But yeah, they still do decapitating of the hand and public, punishment and all that.
Yeah.
But it takes a lot for a man to have the arm or leg chopped off, or punished. But it's so simple for a woman to break the law and get punished. It's always so much easier for a woman to be punished. Um, Men seem to get away with a lot, while women, get stoned or get their arm chopped off or hand chopped off for doing simple things like stealing bread. Oh, cut her hand off. Um, yeah, it's really biased, isn't it?
Well, and then I guess maybe to counter that, what you just said, what about that guy who collected sticks on the Sabbath, and then he prayed to God, and God said, Moses, and said, "You need to stone this bloke."
Well,
That's pretty hectic as well.
I'm glad we're not living in those times anymore.
I reckon
We wouldn't be alive.
that's correct. Moving along now, thank God we got a bit of a change of pace here. Matthew chapter 10, verse 34 to 36. All right, this is a bit of an interesting one because often in the Bible, Jesus is said to be the Prince of Peace. We always get this sort of thing that comes up in church, here Jesus, Prince of Peace. And here he speaks directly against it. He says in verse 34, "Do not think that I came to bring peace on earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword." Now here's a sword talk again. "For I have come to set a man against his father, a daughter against her mother, a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law, and a man's enemies will be those of his own household." Now, I know there's a lot more attached to that. I know it's all about, Jesus is coming to bring the truth. He's coming to bring, not everyone's going to accept the truth. So therefore there's going to be division. But I just find it interesting how he says explicitly, "I've not come here to bring peace."
Yeah. Well, the sword is another sort of code for truth. There is verses that seem to contradict. In one area he says, "Those who die by the sword those who live by the sword die by the sword."
Yeah, that was in part one, guys. So if you want to go check out part one where we brought up a lot of that, jump in there too. We talk a lot more about the sword in that part as well. So sorry, just wanted to put that in there.
But in this context, Jesus, when he's saying, there's gonna be division, daughter against mother and mother-in-law. A man's enemies will be those of his own household. Like the whole household will be arguing amongst each other. The context of that is Jesus is bringing in a new system, a new law, and it's going to be controversial. There's going to be some in the household that are going to agree with me, and then some that are not going to agree with me, and it's going to cause families to argue with each other. So this new system, he's talking to a Jewish world, and Jesus is slowly moving away from the traditional Jewish laws and Jewish way of life, and he's moving to a new system based on love God and love your neighbor. So there will be those that want to stick to the old Jewish tribe and the old Jewish ways, and there'll be those that would follow Jesus and the new way of doing things. And so it will cause argument within families. Some will follow Jesus, some won't. And And that is the division that Jesus is talking about.
So, I've even heard people interpret this as, you've got a lot of messianic leaders rising up at this point in time when Jesus is around. Some people say there was 19 different Jesuses at this particular time in history, or very close to it. All these messianic figures, and some people say that Jesus is basically saying, "Hey, I'm the real Slim Shady. I'm going to be the one that stands up, and everyone else can sit down, kind of thing. But I'm going to be the one to bring the division. I'm going to be, there might be other voices out there. You think about it too, to expand on the point. How it says, like, there's going to be, Jesus says, there's going to be many messiahs and prophets and people who come in my name, and don't listen to them. If they tell you to go to the desert, don't come and follow them, and all this sort of stuff, and antichrists and all these sorts of people. So you can imagine this, at this time, there's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of people looking for answers. This is around where the Jewish revolt is. Again, I brought that up in part one, where the Jews are looking for answers. Why are they oppressed by the Romans? We need God to rise up and bring us a leader that's going to save us and get us out of here. And there's a lot of different voices at this time. There's a lot of different messianic leaders and a lot of people. If you go look at Josephus, you go look at other Gospels and so forth, even the Talmud will tell you there's different messianic leaders that rise up in this time, and they all get killed. They all get, even says I think Paul in Acts, I think it says the Egyptian starts talking about the Egyptian false prophet, and Paul gets confused with the Egyptian. He goes, no, I'm not the Egyptian. I'm not that guy. You don't have to worry about me. All this sort of stuff. So there's all these people in this uprising, and he's saying, no, I'm the true guy. I'm the real guy. Follow me, kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, any false prophet in the day would have been stoned to death. If a prophet was seen as false, they would stone him. Imagine that today. All these wacko prophets that prophesied Trump would win a second term, they would be all put to death if they lived in ancient times.
That's right.
Yes, there was many prophets put to death because they're claiming to be prophets, but they were proven to be false prophets. But think about it. Jesus was also put to death because he's claiming to be the Messiah. But funny, he never said in public, I am the Messiah or I am the Son of God. When Pilate says, who are you, the Son of God? He goes, who do you say I'm the Son of God? He doesn't actually say. He always tends to twist it around that he doesn't actually say it himself. He also asks Peter, who do you say I am? And Peter goes, you're the Son of the living God. He doesn't say I am the Son of the living God. He gets other people to say it for him. And it's sort of a trick. But yeah, think about it. Jesus was also put to death because the authorities of his day, the Pharisees, saw him as a false prophet. They saw him not as the Messiah. So they put him to death, just like all the other false prophets and messiahs. It's strange because the movement later on, which formed into Christianity, sees Jesus as the prophet, as the Son of God, and then we Christians see him as the Son of God. But until this day, Jews still see him as a false prophet, and they're happy that they had killed him.
Yeah. It's interesting too, like when you compare that verse to like Revelation, where you've got it says there's a guy who's on a white horse and he's got a bow, and he comes, he's meant to be like the Antichrist, and he brings a peace to the world for 3.5 years. And then you got Jesus who rocks up with a sword, and he's riding a white horse, and he comes with his angels and stuff. So it's like, it's so complete opposite. You think Jesus is meant to be Prince of Peace, but he doesn't do anything of the sort. And the one who does bring peace is the bad guy.
Well, that's because there's this image that Jesus is the Prince of Peace. And so when the Antichrist brings 3.5 years of peace, many people think he is the Messiah, he is God. And they start following him and worshiping him. But that's the deceiving. He's the son of Satan. Jesus was trying to establish a new system, getting away from all this law crap, and start trying to establish a new system based on transformation. You transform yourself and you transform the world. And the way you do that is you love God and love your neighbor. And you look after the poor, you look after those who are unfortunate. Jesus was trying to establish a new system, not based on the old law judging system. But because he was so far from the old Jewish system, the lawmakers of his day saw him as a false prophet, and that's why they killed him, because it was too radical. He was trying to change things so radically. And he knew that by doing that, he's going to ruffle feathers. He's going to make family argue amongst each other. That's why he says, I haven't come to bring peace. I've come to bring the sword. I've come with the sword, right? Because he knows that what I'm bringing is going to bring violence. It's going to bring chaos. It's not going to be easy. This transition away from the old system, it's going to bring a bit of havoc. So he was truthful to what he was doing, what he was bringing, and he got crucified for it. But people don't see that until, now, hundreds of years later, we can look back and we could sort of see it differently now. But in his days, people didn't understand what he was getting at, what he was trying to do.
Yeah.
They just saw him as changing everything, and oh, he's not the Messiah. He's just some weird guy trying to change everything.
Some weird
guy. That's how they saw him, He's friends with that bozo who eats locusts, the John the Baptist guy.
He's friends with tax collectors, little midgets that hang out in trees and stuff.
Exactly. See, God would never, the Messiah would never do that, He's making friends with prostitutes and tax collectors and that John the Baptist bozo, he's too radical. We should get rid of him.
All he needs is just some happy pants.
Oh, imagine if he had what's that? MC Hammer pants. That would have been great.
Yeah. Hammer time.
Hammer time.
Anyways, alrighty, we're going to end on a heavy point here. I know for sure we're going to go for. We can do part 3, 4, 5, up to 25. Easy, no worries on this subject. Easy, no worries. We can even maybe continue reloading for next week, but
there's a lot.
Yeah,
I just want to say there's a lot in the Bible that when you read it with modern in our modern world, it's crazy. There's a lot of crazy stuff in the Bible that some things don't make sense. That's why we can go on and on and on, many episodes on these weird verses.
The thing is too, I feel like the Bible is definitely treated as the greatest hits album, where you've got the 25 or 30 best songs of all time, and all the B-sides and C-sides and all director's cut are all on the ground, and we don't even talk about them. We don't even acknowledge they're even there. So people quote verses out of context. They don't even listen. They don't even bring them up. They don't even know they're even there. Like, there's so many. We could talk about Balaam and the talking donkey. We could have talked about that one today. We could have talked about Jonah and the whale. We could have talked about the king of Egypt, Pharaoh Ramses II, getting hard. God does that to him. God
Well, we
assists
don't
him.
know. We don't know if it was Ramses,
Well, some people
but
say it was. Anyway, I was just chucking that in there, but
it
there's so many that we could have brought up today. But
we,
I feel sorry.
in church, exactly. None of these verses ever come up in church. No one ever talks about them. They always
Yeah.
talk about the nice verses, the Jesus saves you, he loves you.
Well, God's got a plan for your life. God's got a future. They quote Jeremiah 29 verse 11. Saying, "I've come to bring." What is? I'm going to stuff up the quote, but like basically saying, "I've got such a great future, and I want to prosper you, not to hurt you." And all this sort of stuff. And then you read it, it's actually talking about Israel and it has nothing to do with anything.
Does no churches ever talk about the Nephilim or the
Yeah.
decapitating penises of 200 ripping off the foreskin of 200 men? What churches never talk about this stuff. But the
No,
Bible
that's
is
right.
full
We're
of
the
it.
unfiltered alternative. We are the alternative.
We
We're going
are.
to give it to you raw. We don't even bother editing our videos, man. We just press play, record, and we go for it.
Yep.
Because that's how we do it. Anyway, so this is a bit of it's an odd way to sort of end the show. We got here. This is a very difficult passage in the Bible to read, and this goes very much on the theme of what Jay and I have been talking about in regarding verses in the Bible that do not get a run, and you'll see in a moment why that's the case. So I want to set the scene here before I start reading it. It has got to do with the Midianites and the Israelites, sworn arch enemies. Basically, Moses gets together 1,000 troops of each tribe, and they're going to go down and fight the evil Midianites, who are, they're pagans. They're into human sacrifices. They've caused Israel to sin. So obviously, this is pre-missionary work. We don't do any missionary work in this time, in this era. We don't even talk to our enemies. We go down there and rock up with a sword and tell them who's boss and beat our chest and tell them our God's better than yours and all this sort of stuff. So I'm going to jump in and read it because it's quite lengthy, but you will soon get the full brunt of it. All right, let me just pull this up. Okay, so Numbers 31, verse 9 to 18. And I could have read this a bit further back, but I thought, we don't want this to be a 6-hour thing. So, and he took, and the children of Israel took all the women of Midian captives and their little ones, and took the spoil of all their cattle and all their flocks and all their goods. And they burnt all their cities within they dwelt, and all their goodly castles with fire. And they took all the spoil and all their prey, both men and of beasts. And they brought the captives and the prey and the spoils unto Moses and Eleazar the priest, and unto the congregation of the children of Israel, until the camp of the plains of Moab, which are by Jordan and near Jericho. All right. Verse 13. And Moses and Eleazar the priests and all the princes of the congregation went forth to meet them without the camp. And Moses was wroth, so he was really angry with the officers of the host, with the captains over 1,000 and captains over 100, which came from the battle. So basically, they've had this massive battle. They've won the battle. They've taken all the stuff from these people, and they've taken them all to this plain. And basically, the captains are there, the generals, the sergeants, all the military are all there. And Moses said unto them, have ye saved all the women alive? Behold, these caused the children of Israel through the counsel of Balaam to commit trespass against the Lord in the manner of Peor. And there was a plague among the congregation. Now therefore kill every male among the little ones, kill every woman that have known man by lying with them, but all the women children. They have not known a man by lying with him, keep a life for yourselves.
Mm,
That is horrific.
it is.
Absolutely horrific.
It sounds like the Holocaust. You know what Hitler
Yeah.
did to the Jews. That sort of a just kill them all kind of thing attitude. But spare the women, kind of thing.
I don't even know where you go from there. Like, honestly, I feel so sorry for those women. And I think in another verse, somewhere along the lines, it says there was like, I could be wrong in saying this, there's like at least 60,000 of these girls.
Mm.
Right? Now, could you imagine seeing your mum and your dad get slaughtered and your little brother, and then you get married off and absorbed into this tribe, or get made to be a sex slave, or get made to be a child bride or a servant or a slave? You're basically minimum chips, you're a slave.
Yep.
You're a slave of some sort.
Yep.
And you can't say to me, oh, it's because they defiled the land. What about the little boys? I think that's the smoking gun in this whole thing, that the little boys didn't, they were murdered, they were massacred.
Mm.
It's pure evil. And this goes again to see, as long as you chuck in, thus says the Lord, or the Lord says it's okay, no worries, man. You can do whatever you want, justify it, no problem. And that's what I guess religion has done that over thousands and thousands of years. As long as you can justify it, like with the Crusades, obviously with the Muslims, you can say that the Lord told us to do this, or God told us to do this, or even like the Germans, they had on their belts, "In God We Trust," written on their belts. Right? As long as you can say that, you can justify all sorts of evil.
Every tribe, every cultural group that goes to war over the last few thousand years, they've always used that we're doing this for God. We're God's people. We're the Crusades. The Muslims were fighting because they believed that God told them to stay in the city. And then you got the Christians from Europe wanting to kill all the Muslims because they believe that God told them that the Muslims are dangerous, we should kill them. So you got two groups believing God told them to do this, and they're fighting because their gods told them.
Yeah.
In this story, it's so sad, the women that have known the men by sleeping with them, you can kill them all. Pretty much any woman that has slept with a man, kill them. The culture back then was very tribal for a long, long time, and that's how they fought. That's how they conquered their enemies. That's how they gained land. They fought in these ways, and they defeated them by killing the whole tribe, including women, including the little babies. That was the culture, tribal culture. And we think that it's an ancient thing, but we had a glimpse of it not that long ago when ISIS was ravaging for about 5 years, causing havoc around the world. They were taking over a lot of the Middle East, and they would kill off all the men in a town and take the women as slaves.
Yeah.
They even still, till this day, still have a lot of women as their slaves. And they believe God told them that it's time, the caliphate, to take over the world. And so they were going into Europe. They were bombing London and Paris, and even here in Sydney, we had the Lint Cafe incident.
Yes.
It's that whole culture that God told us it's we're going to take over. We're going to, because God said this.
I think it was yesterday they had the anniversary. I could be wrong in saying this. The Bataclan, they went to the theater, and they had 137 people died in there.
Oh yes, yep. Okay, the anniversary of that.
6 years ago.
We had the Boston bombing as well.
Yeah.
But that was the culture in ancient times, that sort of tribal mentality. And it sort of disappeared for a long time, and yeah, just resurfaced again with ISIS. That whole, we're doing it because of God, and the way they did it, they decapitated people's heads. They took women as slaves, just like ancient times.
It's it's weird. Like in some ways we progress as a society, and in other ways we don't go far, do we? We're just still stuck on the same spot.
There would always be violence. There would always be that sort of
Like
competitiveness amongst man. Man will always be arguing and fighting. But I think in general, 99% of things we have improved. We no longer take our enemies' wives and hold them captive as slaves anymore. I mean, ISIS does that, but most of the world doesn't do that anymore. We no longer rip off the foreskin of our enemies. We no longer don't eat pork because God says not to. We've progressed and understand that was stupid, and we've moved on from that. Most of the world has moved on from that. So we had another episode a few weeks ago. Is the world getting better or worse? And yeah, when we look at all these verses that captures the culture of ancient times, I think the world has definitely gotten much better, in many ways. The treatment of women, the way we even, we don't fight over these silly things as much anymore, although we still have war, but we don't. Yeah.
Isn't it funny,
Yep.
how women, they're viewed as like, sometimes they've got value and then other times they've got no value. It's just like in this instance they have value because they're there to reproduce with, and we want to absorb them into the tribe. But I'm thinking outside, like they didn't keep the boys alive, the little boys, because the boys would grow up and fight them.
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas the women were most likely not going to be able to do that because we can subdue them, we can physically outstrength them, outmuscle them, and there's going to be no resistance. That's what I'm sort of thinking happened there.
Yeah. Women make good slaves and good, sex slaves too was a big part of it. That's why they kept women a lot of the time. But the thing about about the Bible, about looking at ancient times, in many cultures, not just Christian and Hebrew culture, a lot of this goes back to God. All these ghastly things happen because of God, because of man's understanding of God. God told us to do this. God wants them to be dead. That tribe should be conquered. The sad thing is, it's such a wrong interpretation of God. It's man. When you really think of it, if you think that God has ordered all these ghastly things, it really paints a picture of God as a tyrant, as worse than Satan.
Yeah, he's an absolute monster.
A monster.
But I think for me, like if you view, if you view the Bible as a book written by men, and a lot of them have used it to justify their existence or to justify their rationale for killing or destroying or whatever, conquering, you can see how they use that. That's quite clear. I don't believe that God tells people to go kill other people. I don't think he does that. I don't think there's a real interaction there. I believe that God's a creator. I believe that we can seek peace through, when you're trying to meet God and stuff like that. But like, I don't think he's telling, like, I don't believe like this stuff like, oh, God's going to tell you to marry this certain person, or you got free will. You got complete free will in this life. You can do good or you can do bad. It's up to you. You can justify good, you can justify evil, whatever. And that's how they've justified it.
What is what is good and what is bad? Something that is good to you might be bad to another culture.
That's right.
But you can argue, no, it's good because God says it's good. But to that other culture, it's not good, it's bad, So your understanding of God from your cultural understandings could be completely different to that culture's understandings of God. And that's why we have different religions, because they have different understandings of who God is or what God is. But go to violence, arguing our God is better, our God is correct, we're going to kill you because you don't agree with us, to go to that extent is barbaric and is not, and that is human endeavors, that is human wrong understandings. It's not godly, it's not moral. And that's where
it's like, you go in there, you instead of rehabilitating the culture or sitting down with the leaders and going, hey man, all this stuff you're doing with human sacrifices or whatever you're doing, that's completely bad. I guess they're going to turn around and say, oh, what are you talking about? What you practice. They're going to start questioning what you do too, right? There's no middle ground. I don't see there's as far as I know, there's no thing of mediation. I think some people have said there's like a 400-year of gap where God tries to get them to stop it, but like I don't know, like it's a strange thing, and it's only taken from one side of the story as well. We don't know what the Midianites were experiencing.
Exactly.
We'll get it from the Israeli side or Jew side, whatever.
Everything that we read is always from one point of view. And then we just tend to believe it because it's from our side of view. We're Christian, so we just believe it. But for the poor Midianites that were slaughtered, I'm sure they have a different understanding from their point of view. If you look at the Crusade writings by the Empire, the British Empire, it's all about superiority. We must keep our strength, so we have to go there and defeat them. But if you read the writings from during the Crusades, if you read the writings of the Muslims, which the Britons called the savages, if you read it from their point of view, it's completely innocent. Like they didn't want to go to war at all. They didn't want to invade England or Europe or anything. It was a blatant attack straight from the British. It was. So you got to sort of read both sides. But sadly, we tend to just believe our own side of our own religion and our own point of view, and just go with that for the rest of our life.
Yeah. What do you think about people like who are in apologetics and they say, like, they justify the massacre? I know that's a bit of a question without warning, but like, I can't even remotely justify it.
Well, they would justify it. The Lord is holy, and they're the enemies. They are immoral. They are they were the bad people. So anything the Lord does is justified according to Christians and apologists. That's how they justify it. But from a human moral point of view, death in general, killing in general, even your enemy, is not justified. You That's why in the modern world, most countries have gotten rid of the death penalty, because it's okay, that person did something bad, but now you go and kill that person by the death penalty, electric chair or whatever. That makes us just as bad as them.
Yeah.
Is that justified? You're okay, that person did a hugely bad act, so we're going to go and do the same thing to that person. You can't justify anything with violence or death. Death is not moral. The only thing that justifies is love. You can defeat death with love. You can defeat violence with love, and that's the kind of thing Jesus was getting at. But I think humans still have a long way to fully understand what morality is and what justifying is. You can never do it with violence, and that's why the Old Testament, that's why the Bible is such a mess, because there's so much there justifying on behalf of God through violence, the use of violence.
So, how do you go from 10 Commandments, they shall not murder, and then you go tell people to go massacre the village down the road? That doesn't make any sense to me.
Exactly.
To me, that flies completely in the face of it all.
It does. But then people...
there's going to be people out there who's going to say, oh, but they were in the way. There was a promised land that Abraham was supposed to give these guys. I'm sure God can think of other ways to, God of the Bible can think of other ways to bring peace and make them leave. Like, he could have created a famine in that area, and all the people had to pack up and leave and go somewhere else. Ta-da! You get the whole land for yourself, and then turn it into an oasis. You could do anything like that. The imagination should be unlimited. But to go down to a village or a city or whatever, burn the whole place to the ground, slaughter all the animals, kill all the men and women, kill all the boys, and then take all the daughters for yourself to do whatever you want, marry them, whatever, yeah.
But it's justified because God said we can do it. That's his orders.
Yeah.
If we did that today, that's pretty much what ISIS is doing. And we know how barbaric ISIS is.
Well, you can go as far to say, that's even like what the Nazis did or whoever. You go into a space, destroy the whole thing, take all the women captive, like you kind of said before, all the minorities, all the people you don't want, put them in a camp, kill the ones you don't want, keep the ones you want who are good for the labor. When they drop dead, rinse and repeat, just get some more, sort of thing. It's all, God's plan, whatever you want to say, just bolt that on there to justify it.
You just whack the label, God said do this, and then it's justified.
Yeah.
But we have to put in mind that the Bible is written over about 4,000 to 5,000 year period. And most of that time, we're dealing with the Middle Eastern area. And the peoples were very tribal. A lot of these groups were trying to populate. We're trying to become a prominent force. And the only way they could do that...
the other guy.
Sorry?
Becomes like whoever's got the most kids or whatever can win. We need more soldiers. We need more population. We need more this and that. That's why the women are targeted, I guess, in some ways, because they're viewed as the vehicle to prosper in that way. Populate.
A lot of the women in the Old Testament is mostly used for procreation, for babies. It changes a little bit in the New Testament, but pretty much that's the only use for women in the Old Testament. It's just to procreate population. But yeah, in a tribal world, the only way you can survive and your title would carry down the ages is if you defeat your enemies. And the only way you do that is by violence, is by war. You gotta show that your strength, that you have strength, and you gotta really defeat your other enemy and
completely annihilate them, like completely just destroy them, But it's funny. I think if you go back and read that verse, later on, the Midianites are still around. Like it's not like it's sort of weird. It's like they said they're completely destroyed, but they're still around somewhere. Like I don't know. It's bizarre. We'll have to dig that up next time. Like if we do
they continued on for a long time, and their descendants are still around today. But yeah, the Bible was largely written and crafted in a very tribal atmosphere, tribal world, and that's why there's a lot of violence in the Bible. And to get anything done, you got to whack the title. God said this. God said that. To do this. To do that.
Yeah.
But as a progressive Christian, we tend to look at the Bible through modern lenses, and we tend to understand that it's not God, all of this. It's more the culture of the time. It's more man. We don't take the Bible literally. We take it more as a document of history, of some things that may have happened with man understandings, not a book written by God, but a book written by man with man understandings of God.
Limited understanding.
Limited. Very limited. But we progress and we've gotten better over the years. We've gotten more smarter. Our knowledge is more accessible. We're moving away from a lot of the barbaric attitudes of the past. And we have a bit of a clearer understanding of God too in the modern time. And that's why we don't do a lot of these barbaric things anymore, because we realize that's not really God. That's more us that had done all that.
Yeah. So, Jay, today's episode, final thoughts?
Final thoughts? Yeah. If you read the Bible, there's a lot of crazy stuff in there.
And more to come.
We'll be talking about more of it. We'll be talking about more of it in part 3. More foreskin.
No, more cowbell.
Yeah. Well,
all right. I think we're going to leave it there because we've gone on for long enough. People, just want to say thank you for those who've come all this way to watch this episode. We will do a part 3 or 4 and so on and so forth. Please like and subscribe to our channel. And please, we would love to hear from you. Comment below. What do you think about what we said today? I know some of it's controversial, but please, we want to engage with you guys. Eventually, we want to do live streams in the future. We're going to build up a bit of a following first, do some live streams, get people on board, and discuss the points. Thank you very much, and have a great day. All right, see you, Jay. Thanks, man.
See you guys.